speak on Chelsea for a minute. We haven't got time to go through their entire game. But I want to ask a question. Has there been too much disrespect put upon Nico Jackson? I want to show you some statistics, okay? First one involves Mo Salah. Non-penalty goals since the start of last season, Nico Jackson has more. In the last 2 seasons combined, non-penalties, take away penalties, GA-wise, Nico is now level because he got an assist. Nico Jackson's output is on level with Bukayo Saka. Have we been, I'm going to go to Ches first on this, has Jackson been disrespected in the Premier League in terms of his outputs as a player?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And the thing is, it's so weird to me because this guy wasn't bought for a lot of money, but some of our other signings were. He's obviously come from a new league. Second professional season was last season, but he came from Villarreal, I think he came from. And he got 14 goals and a few assists in the league. And the reason why, I understand why he gets the hate, because he's a leading striker for Chelsea, who weren't in a good space, 2 years ago, weren't in a good space last season. So because he's the head of the face of that, people hate on him a bit more. When you look at the numbers, look at the performances, he's actually been putting them up. And as a Chelsea fan, I can say this, because only when rivals actually watch the guy, like the West Ham game, or you watch him in a big top six game, then they actually see how he's actually good on the ball. He's got good dribbling, he's got good skills. He's not a clinical finisher, which everybody knows that. But at the same time, he still gets the numbers. And players he's compared to, that we just saw, who are deemed clinical, have the same numbers as him. And he's 23 years old. He's not 27, he's not 26, 25, where he's reaching sort of his prime. He's a young kid who came from the Spanish league for £32 million and is doing all right. Now, I'm not saying as a Chelsea fan that this is the peak and the pinnacle and he hasn't got to improve, because he does. His clinical attributes need to improve. And this season, he's very clinical. If we continue that, then cool. But at the same time, people on this panel don't have strikers like him, but they'll laugh at my striker. People in the league will laugh at my striker who puts up more numbers than their players. That's the thing that doesn't make sense to me. Rivals laugh at Jackson, but then I'll be like, what player do you have that scores 14 goals in the Premier League? And they go into their best player. Jackson wasn't our best player last season, and he's got more goals than most teams' attackers in the league, in his first season in the league. So that's why I'm saying Chelsea fans relax with him, because we see he's got trajectory. A lot of rivals, of course, doing their job being tribal, don't see it. But I rate him as a player. I think he's very underrated. He's still got a lot to improve, but that's what he gives you. He gives you 2 goals here, assist here. And this season, I know it's been 5 games, I'm not going overboard, but at least in games where he doesn't score, he gets an assist. Or he's doing something impactful in the game. So if I can see that more often, then cool. But a lot of rival fans, if he continues at this, I've got a lot of egg in their face, because apparently he's crap, apparently he's this, apparently he's that. He's sitting on 4 goals in the league. So I'm
to be fair, Chaz, you guys told us all summer that you wanted what's his name, Osimhen. I don't know if you personally said it or not.
Do you know why that is? That's because of the clinical attributes. It's not because Jackson's a footballer and what he brings to the team. It's because we believe, certain Chelsea fans believe that a more clinical striker would have pushed us to top 4. And it's a very arguable point that if we had Osimhen last season, I think we would have finished above Aston Villa. Because
that makes Terry's question fair from earlier, because he said, was it fair to criticize him for his output? I think that was the question I asked. And his output,
yeah, but that's why
a lot. But there is certain games where you're like, wow, how did he miss that?
FA Cup
Arsenal game is an example.
This is the thing though. Like Terry's question is like him as an individual, but I wouldn't attribute the semi-final, for example, or us finishing 6th on him. That's what I would say. So, for example, last season we had the attackers we do this season. I think we finished top 4 last season, all things being considered. So I don't think us finishing 6th for not winning any trophy last season was because of him. So that's why I think harsh that people blame him because he's new to the league, because he's not pleasing in the eye, so people would like, because he's not as big as Haaland is. But when you actually look at the numbers and the impact he has on teams, it's actually quite a lot. But that doesn't mean that I cannot expect more. I think he can still do better, because I think he can.
You know something? The people who are the most disrespectful to Jackson is actually your own fan base.
It's
they
actually
have no patience.
I don't think it is.
It is. It is your own fan base.
He got 14 Premier League goals.
No, 1 second. Your own fan base are the people who make fun of Jackson on a regular basis. make jokes about him, constantly show comps of him missing. It's not as many rivals making fun of Jackson as Chelsea fans themselves making fun of Jackson. Also, there's people that were saying the guy you guys got from Barcelona who's sitting on your bench, we need to give him a go if Jackson doesn't play. There's people who were saying he shouldn't have even started the game that he scored the 2 goals in the brace this weekend. So as much as you want to big up Jackson, everyone here wants to big up Jackson. He's, first of all, Mo Salah and Saka are some of the best players in the league. Are we saying he's one of the best players in the league all of a sudden now because he scored a bunch of goals and got a couple assists?
That's
No.
the point of that stat, Miguel. That he's not, but he puts up these stats.
No. Number two, he's performing decent, but even then, he was still getting criticized by Chelsea fans for the misses in the close games. So as much as we want to sit here and big him up for his performances, which he deserves to be bigged up for the start that he's had to the season, let's see if he can maintain it, and let's see if he now changes the opinions of those Chelsea fans who are much louder than Ches and insult him on a regular basis.
Yeah, the thing is, you had to go at me earlier for saying Arsenal fans say something, and you just use the same logic with Chelsea fans.
I could literally go to Twitter and give you 50 examples of this past year where Chelsea fans were criticizing Jackson, calling him a donkey, making all sorts of insults to him, saying we need Osimhen now, we need Victor Gyökeres, we need Sesko, we need somebody else. So I'm not talking about Chelsea fans. I can give you many examples of Chelsea fans who've said this, and I'm not telling you.
Luckily, I don't.
Telling you how they feel now. I'm telling you what they've said to me on a regular basis, and you yourself have experienced this on a regular basis. So let's not sit here and act like Jackson, because he's playing well right now, that your fan base was all in love with him and wanted him to be your starting striker.
Again.
You yourself, second, you yourself, Ches, did not want him as your starting striker. So don't come here, sit here and change up your whole tune out of nowhere. You're lying to the people, my friend.
Anyway, luckily, no one wants you to go on Twitter and do that. Luckily, you just showed you're very emotional. 2 reasons. Let me speak now. You just went on a rant for no reason, by the way. You just did the same thing. You had to go at me earlier and did the exact same thing and said Chelsea fans, and people in the chat just quoted, you don't rate him yourself, which says a lot. But what I was going to say to you was Jackson could still improve. When once in my soliloquy that I say he's a starting striker and he's going to be there, I don't want him to be replaced. If Nkuku scores when he goes off the bench, I'd rather him play up front. He's more clinical than Jackson. If Jackson can keep playing like he's done the last 5 games, for the next 5 games and after, then I want him to start because he's producing goals and assists on a regular basis. If he's not as clinical as last season and he's hit and miss like we saw last season, then I want him to be replaced. Because as a Chelsea fan, I want the best of the best, and so is everybody else in this panel. It's as simple as that. So if he can continue on this rate and be more clinical and get goals and assists where he's not performing well, or get braces here and there like he did against West Ham, then no Chelsea fans are going to complain because he's doing what you want him to do, which is score goals and get assists. Simple as that.
Okay, let me give him some prop outside of what Ches said and Igal said, because this is not the who said what show. Let's just give Jackson some praise, because I praised him last year and I actually told Tay I would take him over Højlund, and I kind of got laughed at for that, but my stocks look good a year later. Jackson is probably the best hold-up striker in the league. Let's just be honest right now. And I don't think Haaland is a hold-up striker before anyone thinks anything. His hold-up play is amazing. His link-up play is amazing. Everything he does on the pitch, everything he did on the pitch last season, bar scoring goals, was very good. He just lacked the clinical edge. And we all saw it, and it was easy to see it. The Ches said he had 14 goals. I didn't even know that. So that's still a good number considering someone who missed
decent numbers the first season.
Yeah, it's very good. I didn't even know he had 14, but he had 14 while missing a lot of chances. So obviously, if he can improve on that this year, then he'll be even better. I think also, listen, y'all, let's be honest, Chelsea fans wanting someone who's more clinical, I don't think that's a bad thing. That's the same reason a lot of people in your fan base wanted Gyökeres while you want Havertz, because Havertz is very good on the link-up, but probably he's not the most lethal finisher, if I should say. But Jackson deserves a lot of praise, because I watched that. I didn't watch the Chelsea game when it was live, but I watched it last night. He was all over the place in that first half. He had everything happening in terms of link up and runs and everything. If he wasn't on the pitch, I don't think Chelsea win that first half comfortably like that. So he deserves a lot of praise for what he's doing. And his development is looking good. And listen, anyone who disrespected him at first, it's fine. I flip-flopped on him a few times last season until I made up my mind. And he's been looking good. You know, I don't know if anyone here has an argument for anyone that could do his job better than him. I see a few people saying Xerxes. As much as I rate Xerxes, I don't think Xerxes has the agility that Jackson brings. So they're both hold up strikers in different ways, you know. But I rate him highly, and he deserves the praise. And it's fun if they want to still address the striker market in January to get someone who's at least off the bench that could chip in with a goal or whatever when they need it. But he's doing a great job, and he deserves praise. We need to stop making fun of him.
Yeah, I think with Chelsea, like, it was interesting. I didn't realize those stats around Jackson, and I think that's because sometimes in life something can protrude. So his lack of clinical edge in those big games stands out so much. You end up ignoring a lot of the good stuff he does. You know, I just think, and away from players yesterday, I thought 7 minutes of time added on in the game yesterday wasn't enough. That's how I felt watching the second half. Then the facts came out, and the ball was in play in the second half more than was in play for 35 minutes, which is more than any other half of football in all the 50 games played in the Premier League so far this season. Therefore, 7 minutes was actually too much, because never do you see that in the first half unless there's a long thing in terms of how long the ball was in play. So my mind changed because the facts changed. And I look at Jackson now, and I'm looking at his performances, looking at the facts, and it's a case of, I still think the criticism that should be there on his lack of clinical edge in the big games. But he isn't as bad a football player as he's probably being made out. And I think you have to address that. But equally, I think Chelsea are in that situation. I think Chelsea are getting better and better. And it isn't just about the 5 games this season. You look back, and since February, there's been just 2 defeats. A lot of their underperforming players, probably barring Mudryk, have all slowly but surely started to get better and better.
Yeah,
and they're not
those 2 defeats were to Arsenal, Man City, by the way.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a case of, I just feel as though Chelsea are in a much better position with a much better squad than I think at the start of the season football fans and football at large was giving them credit for. And yes, you could argue they're a little bit fortunate against Brentford, against Bournemouth with the timing of the win. But then you look what they did against West Ham; they were absolutely blew them away. And then it was the game management against West Ham that I was so impressed with.
That's what I was going to speak on. Yeah, like the West Ham game, we touched on it briefly, because I'm going to end soon. Just, it was a surprise, because I was on the girls' team, for example. I didn't think it would be that convincing, because everyone was telling me, yes, they're playing poorly, but the Man City game, they still conceded, obviously scored a goal, and then the game before that, Aston Villa, was a 2-1 smash or grab kind of game. So those teams are in the top echelon in the league, and they won the game. It wasn't as convincing as our result. It was very, very convincing. They didn't touch the ball. The game management was perfect. Caicedo was excellent. Since literally about end of last year, he's been phenomenal, but no one wants to talk about it. He's £100 million. And the overall team looks as though so far there's a lot of chemistry and understanding within the setup. So it's only taken 5 games or so, and I'm starting to see patterns of play every single game. I'm starting to see certain runs, players knowing their role, when to release the ball, when not to. And those things in the pot we weren't seeing. We sat on these teams last year, and Chelsea were very haywire, wayward. We weren't really controlled, not winning games. And this season, I'm seeing a bit of a difference, other than the City game, which, again, I think we could have got a draw out of that game. So, for me, moving forward, if we can start seeing consistency of the style of play, then there's no reason why we can't get top 4. But I still have to see it. I haven't seen consistency since Tuchel was here. So, yeah, I'm quite happy where we're at right now. And I think a lot of people are surprised, even the way Chelsea are playing, because a lot of people expected us to have a decent start. But I think if we can get wins out of Forest and Brighton, respectively, then we're looking quite good for the big games coming up against Newcastle and Liverpool away. So, yeah, I don't think people want to give us credit, but I think we're slowly just doing our thing.
I think you're going to do really good this season, and I think you're going to get top 4. Honestly, I think I've seen enough. You're going to do really well against majority of the smaller teams. In the big games versus the big teams, that's probably where you're going to drop points, and teams that are really set up well. But overall, you're going to have enough attacking threat to beat a lot of the smaller teams on the
So, Miguel, you've seen enough of Chelsea in 5 games, but you haven't seen enough of...
No, because they've been doing it. As Terry said, they've been doing it. And I'm comparing them to what they're going up against. They're not going up against City and Arsenal. They're going up against Manchester United, who've looked shaky, Tottenham, who've looked shaky, Aston Villa, who, although they've been getting back into games, they haven't looked as good as Chelsea offensively, in my opinion. And then you go down the table, and I don't think the rest of the teams are as good. So I'll give Chelsea some credit. And to be fair, Terry, I had Chelsea in my top 4 going into the season.
You did. Some super chats here. The first one says, Terry, the players Jackson is compared to are not strikers. Now, we understand that. No one said they was good, but we're looking at the two most clinical people at Arsenal and Liverpool, respectively, and he is on par with them in terms of outputs. That's what that comparison was. Nico is the poster child of working harder versus the natural ability of Saka and Salah. He puts in the work to produce.